and thank you for joining us for Monday Encouragement video. So last week we spoke about the importance of walking in forgiveness and how unforgiveness can block some of the blessings that God has in store for us. And so this week I wanted to talk about faith because like forgiveness, faith is one of the keys that's going to unlock God's blessings in our lives. As a single mother, sometimes when God tells us to do something, it can seem very scary or just very weird. And, we might start questioning God and saying, God, how am I supposed to do that? What about the kids? And how am I supposed to give that? It's just me. But whenever God tells us to do something, we cannot hesitate. We have to do it how He tells us to do it and when He tells us to do it. So I'm going to be looking at Exodus 12, verses 8 and 11. And here we find the Israelites the night of the Passover. So verse 8 says, "And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it." Verse 11, "And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover." So by itself, this commandment seemed very weird. They were supposed to eat dinner at night, completely dressed with their shoes on and with their staff in their hand. And they had to do it how God told them to do it and when God told them to do it. And if they hadn't done it that way, then they would not have been ready to leave Egypt when God opened that door. Because it says later on in the same chapter, a couple verses later, that the Egyptians said, "Get out of Egypt. If you don't leave now, we're going to die." And they gave them things and they were urging them to leave. But if the Israelites had not done it the way God told them to do it, when He told them to do it, how He told them to do it, they would not be ready to leave Egypt. And so what we see here is that God has a purpose, plan, and expectation for everything He tells us to do. Just 2 chapters later, in Exodus 14, verses 5 through 9, we see the other part of God's why. So a lot of times when God tells us to do something, He'll tell us the when, the how, and the what, but He doesn't necessarily always tell us the why. So the first part of the why we see with the Israelites is that they had to be ready to leave Egypt when He opened that door for them. And this is where we see the second part of the why. So chapter 14, verse 5, and it says, "And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants were turned against the people, and they said, Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt, and the captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with an high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen, and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Haroth, before Baal Zephon. So here we see now that the Pharaoh and the Egyptians changed their minds, and they're now chasing, they're going after the children of Israel. But picture this, you have a mighty army in Egypt with mighty swift horses chasing 1,000,000 plus people with their animals, with their children, with the elderly in the desert. It would take them no time to catch up with them and re-enslave them. But because the children of Israel did what God told them to do it, when He told them to do it, how He told them to do it, to eat it in haste, to eat it fully dressed, by the time the Egyptians caught up with the Israelites, they were already by the Red Sea. And it was at the Red Sea that they received a total deliverance from the Egyptians. If they would have hesitated and said, well, that doesn't make sense. Why do I have to have my shoes on? Why do I have to have my staff in my hand? That doesn't make any sense. Then the Egyptians would have caught them in the wide open desert. But instead, because they were obedient and they had faith in God, like Mark says, just have faith in God, the Egyptians caught up with them, and God was able to deliver them in a mighty way. And He said, the Egyptians you see before you, you'll never see again. So this week, moms, I just want us to be encouraged to trust God, to have faith in Him, that when He asks us to do something and He gives us the what, the how, and the when, that we should just do it with complete boldness, trust in Him that He has a great why. Thank you for joining us. Have a blessed week, and we'll see you next Monday.